Check with you, Kalinda. Have we got audio, please, Kalinda?
Yes, we do, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome back, members, and we will reconvene the meeting. We'll now go to item 11, which is on page 137 of our agenda. This is a review of our Category A Star Historic Heritage Schedule, and the motions here today before us are for us to approve the notification of a plan change as outlined. So I'll move accordingly. Do I have a second? Councillor Bartley, if you're on the meeting, could you second, please?
Happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The staff that have been working on this, members that are reporting to us today, a Senior Advisor Special Projects, Emma Rush, who will be leading, Rebecca Freeman, Senior Specialist Historic Heritage Advisor, Noel Reardon, our Manager of Heritage, and John Durgood, our Plans and Places General Manager. So I will now pass to Emma Rush, I think, at the opening. Emma, are you with us, please?
Sure. I'm just going to work out how I can share my presentation with you, Morena, Chair and Councillors.
Members, if we could just make sure we're muted, there's quite a lot of feedback, please. Emma, with you, please. Emma, we don't have any audio.
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Councillor Jarvie?
We can hear you now, yes. And we have the presentation before us.
Okay, let me just get that going.
Emma, just on the top left from beginning.
Right, gotcha. Thank you, Kalinda. There we go. Good morning, Chair and Councillors. So I'm here to talk to you about a plan change which is at the start of its process rather than the end of the process, as you've been hearing from other plan changes this morning. This plan change is proposing to make some amendments to the Unitary Plan Historic Heritage Schedule. A bit of background. The plan change is proposing to amend 91 Category A Star Historic Heritage Places, which are identified in Schedule 14 and the planning maps. All of these places are already in the Unitary Plan. There's nothing new in here, no new places being proposed. And most of them have been scheduled primarily for their built heritage values. In the Unitary Plan, we have our significant historic heritage places of Auckland are identified. They're on a list in Schedule 14.1 and they're shown spatially in the planning maps. The regional policy statement section of the Unitary Plan includes some policies outlining criteria and thresholds for how to identify significant historic heritage in our region and then how to include it in the Unitary Plan. And there are three main categories of places in that schedule. Category A, which are places of outstanding significance well beyond their immediate environs. Category B, which are places of considerable significance to their locality or beyond. And Category A Star, which are identified as places in previous district plans which have yet to be evaluated and assessed for their significance. Just as a bit of background, we have around 2,300 historic heritage places in our schedule at the moment, and 198 or 9% of those are Category A, and the majority, 83%, are Category B, and we have 186 Category A stars on our schedule at the moment. So far, the council's done quite a lot of work since amalgamation in the historic heritage space. There have been a number of plan changes that have progressed in the last few years, which have helped make our historic heritage schedule more robust, including adding some new places to that schedule. We've had plan changes which have amended some of the places in that schedule to correct information and update those places. for about 228 places. During the process to amalgamate the legacy plans into the proposed Unitary plan, 240 new places were added, and since the Unitary plan was made operative in part, we've had another couple of plan changes which have added 49 new places in total, plus 2 other places which are in plan change 5, but that's not yet operative. And this plan change that I'm talking to you about today is the first plan change which has is primarily about Category A star. It's the first dedicated plan change to look at those Category A star places and work out what their category should be. Just a bit more detail about Category A star. They are the most significant scheduled historic heritage places from legacy plans. As I already mentioned, there are 186 of them in the Unitary plan, and these places were not re-evaluated when they were rolled over into the proposed Auckland Unitary plan. There just wasn't the time to do that during that process. So the Unitary plan has identified them as Category A star, and it states that they're an interim category and that they need to be re-evaluated and their category status addressed through a plan change process. So this is exactly what this plan change is proposing to do. Just for a little bit more background, the Category A star places are in all the legacy councils except for Auckland City. And Auckland City Category A places had a prohibited activity status for the total or substantial demolition, whereas the other legacy plan, the way they managed significant historic heritage places, there was no prohibited activity. So that's why the top tier places from those other legacy district councils were rolled over as this interim Category A star category. All of these Category A star places have been evaluated as a part of a previous process when they were put into those legacy plans, but for some of them it was actually a long time ago. Some of them haven't been looked at for say 20 or 30 years, and all the legacy councils had different approaches and rules to evaluating historic heritage places. They had a variety of different thresholds within their plans. Sometimes the way they evaluated places was more of a tick box exercise than the comprehensive way that we evaluate historic heritage now. So these places are now being looked at according to the regional policy statement thresholds and criteria to work out what level of significance that they should be. So for this plan change, proposed plan change, there are 91 places from 4 local board areas. So that's Devonport, Takapuna, Henderson, Massey, Kaipātiki and the Faux local board areas. 91 of those places have been re-evaluated by heritage experts. A report's been prepared for each of those 91 places, which sets out history and a physical description of the place. It identifies the historic heritage values of the place, and it includes a recommendation for the category of the place being a Category A or B for each individual place. The plan change is also proposing some amendments to correct errors, to update the plan maps and things according to the values that have been identified in these Category A star reviews. We've done quite a lot of work over the last year while we've been re-evaluating these places to engage with Manafinoa landowners and key stakeholders. In particular, we have engaged with Manafinoa to let them know what we're doing and to see whether they would like to engage with us in terms of whether there are any Manafinoa values associated with these places. We have talked to landowners and provided them with copies of the draft re-evaluation reports for the places that they own or occupy, and encourage them to talk to us and give us feedback about whether there's anything that they feel is wrong or should be added, or any information that we have missed. And we've also done a lot of engagement with local boards. We began talking to local boards about this project in 2020. We sent them memos to advise them what the project was about, and were invited and attended local board workshops with both Devonport, Takapuna and Henderson Massey. And we've had some specific feedback about a few individual places from some of the local board members at Henderson Massey and also Devonport, Takapuna. In terms of the reasons for the proposed plan change, the real crux of it is to ensure that the Unitary plan is accurate and the information within that accurately reflects the historic heritage values of each place. Correct information will ensure that all of our significant historic heritage places are identified and protected and used appropriately according to their values. And any outdated information, including not having the correct category of place, does have the potential to result in a loss of heritage values, or also impose costs on landowners and the council, for example, by requiring consent for an activity which isn't necessary because the values of that place aren't what the plan says they are at the moment. There are 6 places within this proposed plan change that we understand either have known Manafinoa values or are likely to have Manafinoa values. As I mentioned earlier, the views of iwi authorities have been sought on these places and the wider 91 places in this proposed plan change. We were particularly interested to hear from them about whether there was any places that were of significance to them and that we could make sure that information was included as appropriate in the values of each place. We've also sent the draft proposed plan change to iwi authorities as we're required to under the Resource Management Act. To date, we've had feedback from one iwi about one place, which is called Takapuna Springs Site in Devonport. Ngātai Kutamaki were very supportive of the proposed changes we're making to that place, which include recognising it on its correct location. And we're still liaising with them about them providing a statement of significance of the values of that place to them. So in terms of the actual details of the proposed plan change, of the 91 Category A star places, it is proposed that 20 of those are identified as Category A. Significantly, that's quite a much higher percentage of Category A's than is across the wider historic heritage schedule. That's about 22% of the places that we've re-evaluated as part of this project. 57 of the places are proposed to be Category B. There are 10 places that have been re-evaluated which have been identified as not having enough heritage value to meet the criteria and thresholds in the Unitary plan. So it's proposed that those places are deleted. And then there are a few places that have been looked at where the values are closely associated, and it is proposed that those places are going to be merged. So I'll just give you a few more details about what is proposed. The changes to category. The category of each place is really important to make sure that the place is managed according to its values. So those Category A places, they're the top of the top in the schedule. If you think about other examples that we have in the Unitary plan that are Category A, it's things like the Auckland War Memorial Museum, Tiritiri Matangi Lighthouse, Grafton Bridge, places that really are of outstanding historic heritage value, not just to their locality, but to a much wider area. The Unitary plan does state that most places are to be Category B, which is obviously reflected in this proposed plan change. It's important to note that the Unitary plan rules that we have now for Category B places are actually very similar to the rules that were applying to the top tier category of historic heritage places in legacy district plans. So it's not really a downgrade, like some people say. Going from an A star to a B is not necessarily a downgrade in heritage protection. It actually probably means that the provisions that are going to apply to those places align with what the way they've already been managed previously. And the Unitary Plan has a number of rules to enable the development of both Category A and B historic heritage places, but it's the activities that are likely to adversely affect the values of those places, for example, total or substantial demolition, are clearly set out to be avoided in the Unitary Plan. They're not something that is anticipated. So the rules really do apply an appropriate level of protection depending on the category of each place and the activity of development that is proposed. Here is a list of the proposed deletions. There is Gillespie House in Glenfield, Clement Rags Garden Complex in Birkenhead, Lymington Castle in Birkdale, the Masonic Tavern, Shell Path, Magazine Rock, and the original Devonport Wharf site. They're all in Devonport. There's also 3 plaques which are proposed to be deleted from the schedule, which are also all located within Devonport. So the reasons that these places are proposed to be deleted is that there is, for some of them, there's very little evidence relating to the history or values of the place. For some of them, for example, Magazine Rock and the original Devonport Wharf site, they no longer exist and there is no physical remains of them left. And for some of them, for example, the plaques, they really, once they've been evaluated, they have moderate or even less historic heritage value, so they just do not meet the Unitary Plan thresholds for scheduling. Sorry, I'll just go back to that. One of the reasons, obviously, for doing a proposed plan change, however, is that we are encouraging submissions on this if you recommend that it can be notified. And obviously, if any further information comes up about these places that are proposed to be deleted, well, then that can be considered as part of the plan change process. We have a few merged places. We have 4 places that are currently Category A star, which are all located within Windsor Reserve in Devonport, and they are proposed in this plan change to be merged into a new place called Windsor Reserve Commemorative Landscape. Those 4 places, which are a survey station and mast, a fountain, a memorial, and a plaque that's called Nothing Happened plaque, are all memorial or commemorative markers. So the view of historic heritage expert that reviewed these places was that the values of those places are related and it's more appropriate to manage them as one place rather than 4 individual places. And we have one other place where there's also a proposal to merge 2 places. So the Castor Bay Battery Complex, which is a Category A star and is proposed in the plan change to become a Category A, has a separate place next to it, which is the Red Bluff Castor Bay Battery Recreation Hut. It's already a Category A and it has never been merged with the wider place, even though it's part of that place, because the categories were different. But now that the wider battery complex is proposed to be an A, it's considered appropriate to merge those 2 places. In terms of risks and mitigation with this plan change, there sometimes is a perception that Council is not protecting Auckland's significant historic heritage, particularly when people see that a Category A star has been changed to a Category B. They sometimes view that as a downgrade, and also that we're proposing to delete some places as part of this plan change. However, I think it's really important to highlight that it is a proposed plan change, and like I said, with the public notification of it, there's the opportunity for all interested parties to make submissions and provide any additional evidence of any heritage values. And any information that is raised in submissions and evidence at a plan change hearing will help inform the decision makers. So that's all I have for this presentation, but now I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can't hear you, Chris.
Thank you. So Emma, just to be clear, this is covering the former areas of North Shore City, Monaco City, and Waitakere City. It does not include any parts of the legacy Auckland City. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct. Thank you, Chair. This plan change, like I said, covers 91 of the Category A star places that are in the Unitary plan. At the moment, there are 186 places, so it deals with approximately half of those. There are still Category A star places that will need to be reevaluated in other parts of the region. It just takes quite a long time to do these evaluations, so that's why we haven't dealt with them all at the same time.
Okay, and can we just go back? There's a lot of maybe misinformation about when these were last evaluated. So they weren't evaluated in the process that we undertook in building up, developing and confirming the Auckland Unitary Plan. Do we know, say for example, on the North Shore, when evaluations were last done? This is similar to the confusion about the special character areas and an assumption that the special character areas were evaluated at the time of the Auckland Unitary Plan development. So do you have any idea, say just take the example of the North Shore City Council and when they last undertook an evaluation of the A's and B's equivalents?
Thank you, Chair. That is a good question. I can't tell you exactly when each of the 91 places in this plan change were evaluated, but I do know, I had a look back at the legacy schedules. Some of the ones in the North Shore have not been evaluated for 20 to 30 years. And you're correct, when they were rolled over from the legacy North Shore plan, or all the legacy plans, into the Unitary plan, they were not re-evaluated at that time, and that is why this Category A star was created, to recognise the fact that even though they were the top of those schedules, they didn't accord with the level of protection that the Unitary plan was proposing for the top level places under the Unitary plan. So that's why they were rolled over. But yes, a significant amount of time has passed since a number of them were evaluated.
And in those areas, just want to be clear, when they were evaluated and they were identified as A's in those former plans in, say, a North Shore area, they didn't have a prohibited demolition rule on them.
That is correct. That's correct.
Okay.
So the Legacy North Shore plan managed those Category A places under the North Shore plan in a very similar manner to what Category B places in the Unitary plan are managed. So for total or substantial demolition, it was a non-complying or discretionary activity to do that, which is the same as what the Unitary plan does, the same way the Unitary plan manages it.
So subject to the process ahead of us, the staff are signalling that there would be stronger protection for those that we're identifying as Category A in, say, the North Shore area or Manukau or Waitakere, because they would be in the prohibited category for demolition if they are ultimately confirmed in A. Is that correct?
That is correct. So for the 20 places in this plan change that are proposed for an A, they will be then managed in a more rigorous way than what they were under their legacy plan that they were in before.
Okay, that's good to hear. I will go to some other questions and commence with Member Henare, please. Member Henare.
Oh, kia ora, Chair. Look, I'll bail. I'm all good, mate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Henare. Member Wilson, a question, please.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, Emma, for the presentation. I'm wondering, please, in terms of the plan change that is contemplated here, what, if anything, the Maori Cultural Heritage Program is considered? That's my first question. And my second question, I might as well put it in there now. In terms of Ngāti Manuhiri or any other manawhenua that have been canvassed as to their participation, is there any anticipation they will be given more aid in working its way through a very complex process? The Māori Cultural Heritage Program, as you're probably aware, is taking nigh on 18 months to 2 years to get iwi to a position where they're able to input. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wilson. Emma?
Thank you, Member Wilson. Sorry, in terms of your first question, do I understand whether this process has been related to the Maori cultural heritage process? I'm not quite sure what your question was.
So as we know, there is a Maori cultural heritage program that identifies sites in the same way this is intended to identify them in different categories. Is there any alignment, means to look at whether that's similar to what's being accomplished in that program?
So for the historic heritage schedule, there are a couple of ways where a place can be identified within that schedule of having Manafinoa or Maori values. So the regional policy statement identifies 8 criteria to look at when we're evaluating a historic heritage place, and one of them is the Manafinoa Criterion, and that is the one that we've been trying to engage with Maori to see whether any of these places do have Manafinoa value, and if so, we believe it's up to them to tell us what that is. We can't say what that is. So we've been engaging with them to try and understand what that is. A place can be on both the historic heritage schedule and the sites of significance to Manafinoa schedule. So there is the opportunity for it to be on both places. It doesn't have to be a one or other place. And in answer to the second part of your question, in terms of what we've been doing to help or assist Manafinoa to engage with this process, we've just been making sure that we've been trying to get in touch with them early and give them every opportunity to participate should they wish to, rather than just relying on the regular Resource Management Act requirements, which are relatively, it doesn't give a lot of time if you just did the minimum. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. So I guess I'm trying to understand. Manafinoa are currently engaged in a program, Māori Cultural Heritage Program, which looks at the sites of significance in specific areas, and that's how they put up these sites. And I'm wondering, because of this anticipated plan change, whether the commonalities in terms of sites has been canvassed in that place, and the support and assistance that's been provided there in terms of support and understanding how to input into a plan change could be potentially transferred across in the same manner to get better participation, I guess. Is having a bad day today, clearly I'm not making myself well understood.
No, I understand what you're referring to, Member Wilson, and it's an important point. So, Emma, there's a bit of a crossover here. There's a little bit of a blurring. So how do we make sure that we can embrace both parts? I think you have referenced that is underway. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I guess my first point would be that these 91 places have primarily been identified in the Historic Heritage Schedule for their built heritage values. While I wouldn't presume to speak for Manafinoa in terms of what they think their values are, there were only 6 places within this list which have already been identified as having Manafinoa values, or perhaps may have. So I don't anticipate that there's a lot of crossover between this and the sites of significance work, but I do take your point about how we could be working closer with them to encourage their engagement. I don't know whether Noel, who's online, wants to make any comments about that.
With your permission, Chair, it's Noel, Reardon Manager Heritage here.
Welcome, Noel.
To provide some context, all 91 sites have been run through the Maori Heritage Team in an internal system, and we have checked whether those sites and there is a crossover with any sites that iwi have nominated via the Sites of Significance program. So that's the first point, but it is an internal cross-checking. The second thing is we have been to Manafinoa, the hui that we've had with the Sites of Significance program, and started to discuss this issue of the Historic Heritage Schedule and the Sites of Significance Schedule, and how we can better manage places which fit in one or the other, or as Emma said, in both. So we have started that conversation. I guess it's fair to say that that conversation has been on the back burner when we're trying to process so many nominations. So hopefully that provides some context.
Thank you, Noel. I'll just come back to you, Member Wilson. Are there any supplementaries?
No, I think that was explained as well as it could be, actually. So it is the Māori Cultural Heritage Program that I'm referring to, which contains all those components. I will leave it there, but just acknowledging that it took a lot of resource to aid over a period of 2 years Manafinoa to input into these matters, and it was explained at that time that plan changes take a lot of time and a lot of effort, so get as many as you can in the category that you can whilst you have the opportunity. I guess that's at the crux of why I'm posing those now. It's anything that can be wrapped up in terms of the program that's already in train that potentially could benefit from this plan change. That really was what I was trying to hint at.
Well, thanks for those points. And just covering that off with you, Emma and Noel, under Paris 37, the Māori Impact Statement, there's reference to going to the iwi authorities and to responding, and Ngāti Manuhiri indicated that they'd like ongoing communication. At the next stage, once it's notified, we actually restart that engagement, not just with the 2 iwi groups that have responded, but we go back and establish a communication line with all the iwi groups again, don't we? We don't just follow up with those 2.
No, that's correct. Thank you, Chair. As far as in my opinion, we continue that. We continue with all of them until the process is finished, to make sure that we have any views that they would like to put forward.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, it's Noel here
Noel.
again. I now understand what Member Wilson was hinting at, and I will take that on board and we will see what we can do.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Member Wilson. And now we'll go to a question from Councillor Watson, please.
Yeah, my question's on the 57 locations that are being changed to Category B, and a couple of the ones that are being deleted. And I'm just going to the comment made in the presentation there that the Unitary Plan rules for Category B are similar to rules for the top tier category historic heritage places in the legacy district plans, and I think Emma said that applied to the notion that substantial demolition or destruction was discretionary or non-complying still. What isn't the same, Emma? So you've used the word similar. What is different about the Category B classification in terms of protections being afforded to the building or sites that are being changed?
Thank you, Councillor Watson, for that question. That's a good question, and I can't go into the exact detail of what's exactly the same or what's just similar, because we're talking about a number of different district plans which all had a range of different rules. But I can confirm, as you said, that the total and substantial demolition for those Category A places in legacy plans was either non-complying or discretionary, and under the Unitary Plan depending on whether it's a primary feature of the place or something, you know, around, sort of in the surrounds or the extent of place, it is either non-complying or discretionary for Category A or Category B. So Category B, it's discretionary in the Unitary plan for total or substantial demolition. Most of the rules for things like maintenance and repair are the same under the Unitary plan as the legacy plans. All of those sort of activities are permitted subject to certain standards to make sure that people do things the right way. If you want some more detail on what's exactly different, I'd have to follow up with you later if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, because I think quite correctly you identify in the risks section of the report that, you know, obviously if people are reading that or are told that places are being changed from Category A star to B, the natural assumption there is that that's a downgrade. That's how, you know, anyone would read that. So I'd appreciate that, and particularly in respect of the legacy North Shore plans as it goes to what we call the heritage suburbs of Northcote and Birkenhead Point, which have quite a significant number of buildings identified here. I think at least 18. So that's in a you know, relatively confined area. That's a lot of buildings that are affected by this proposed plan change. And just on that, Emma, you mentioned that there's been significant engagement with the local boards and written feedback sought. While you mentioned Takapuna Devonport, there was no specific reference made to that level of engagement with Kaipatiki. Is that correct? And additionally, where is that feedback? Because it's not immediately evident in this report.
Emma.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. In answer to your second question, the Kaipatiki Local Board is the only board that have not really engaged with us over this project. We were invited by the Devonport, Takapuna and Henderson Massey local boards to attend workshops, but Kaipatiki didn't want us, or didn't request us to do that, and we've had no specific feedback from them about this work. They've all four of the local boards have received the same information about this project, but we haven't heard from Kaipatiki.
Okay, thanks, Emma. Well, that is a little concerning, as I said, given the large number of buildings identified in Old Northcote and Birkenhead Point, which is of course in their local board area. Just in terms of some of the deletions, I noticed, and you mentioned in your presentation, Leamington Castle and Verbena Road, Birkdale, that's been deleted altogether, and it's a little while since I've looked at it, but certainly 50 years ago, it was quite the feature for the local community. In fact, there was, you know, the school visits organised as a matter of course there. I tried to find some more detail as to why that has been deleted in total. Are you able to help me with that?
Certainly, Councillor Watson. I'm not the heritage expert on that castle, but I can answer because I've read the re-evaluation report. It was re-evaluated and it's just come up as having moderate historic heritage value as opposed to considerable, so it doesn't meet that threshold that the regional policy statement requires. It's interesting that in the legacy North Shore plan it was described as a folly. It basically is a castle that was built as a replica, sort of almost fantasy place by the people that owned it, who were very, very fond of castles. And while it's certainly a striking building and has some some local interest, when you look at the regional policy statement and the criteria that are listed under there, it doesn't meet the threshold for actually being the historic bit of the heritage. It's more a sort of an interesting place. But we can share that re-evaluation report with you if you'd like to read it in further detail.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And similarly with the district plan rules of Legacy North Shore, particularly as it goes to those 18 properties or sites in Northcote Point and Birkenhead Point that are the subject of this plan change. So thanks for those answers, Emma.
No problem. I'll make sure that we get that information to you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Emma. I'll now go to Councillor Walker, please.
Sure. Hi, Emma. Just got a question around the changes, particularly the things that are being deleted. I've had a look in the agenda item, and it gives obviously some locational details on a map. Is there some supporting information around the reasoning for the changes?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Walker. Yes, every one of the 91 places in this proposed plan change has been re-evaluated by a heritage expert, and there is a report on each one which goes into a reasonable level of detail about the history of the place, a physical description, and then an evaluation against those criteria that are listed in the regional policy statement. So for each of those 10 places that are proposed to be deleted, there is quite a significant amount of information.
Okay. I might have missed it. Was that information attached to this agenda item, or is it just held separately?
Councillor Walker, no, that information wasn't attached to this agenda item. It runs to many hundreds of pages, but we'd be happy to provide you that information should you wish to see it. And it will be available as part of the plan change if the plan change is notified.
Okay, and is it proposed to make the Council's Heritage Panel aware of these proposed changes?
Councillor Walker, yes, the Heritage Advisory Panel has been kept in the loop of these proposed changes and the process that the Heritage Unit has been going through to re-evaluate these places.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Emma.
Question from Councillor Hills, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Emma and team. I guess my questions sort of are on the same or similar vein to Councillor Watson and Walker. There wasn't a workshop on this, was there, Chair? I'm just worried that I missed. I feel like if there wasn't, it feels like a bit of a missing step because I just don't have that. I know it's hundreds of pages, but I just don't have that information on the why, and I feel like asking a lot of questions on the why would take up a lot of time. But I guess I have concerns, like the Gillespie House, why that has been removed. I think it's one of the only things protected in Glenfield, sort of the area where I grew up, that I can think of that was is a protected building. And I'm a bit confused at what it means to be a B for places like the Bridgeway Theatre and the Pump House, and what that could mean for future decisions around those, those quite significant buildings. Someone could allay my fears, or maybe tell me that actually we don't have a choice, we just have to progress this. I'm just a bit worried that I could make a decision without all the information.
So no, we haven't had a workshop, but we have known that this work has been underway for quite a long time, and there is a Section 32 evaluation report with the quite detailed documentation for each of the localities. But Emma, would you like to expand, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Hills, I do understand your concerns. Just to answer what I think some of your questions are, and please jump in if I have some of these wrong, but in terms of what you're talking about, the significant buildings like the pump house, I totally agree, they are significant buildings, but when you look at the regional policy statement, the difference between a category A and a category B relates to both the level of historic heritage significance, with a category A needing to be of outstanding value and a category B considerable value. And then the next part of the threshold in the regional policy statement relates to its to its area of significance. So a category A is outstanding beyond its immediate environ. So it's sort of anticipated that it's not just something that's outstanding to its local area, whereas the category B is of considerable significance to its locality. So I think if you try and think in your mind about, you know, what level of importance these places have, we have less than 10% of our current scheduled places have a category A status, and they really are those things that are, you know, the really regional importance or the really outstanding local places that have some significance beyond just where they are, you know, kind of like the War Memorial and Old Government House. They're, you know, they are scattered across the region, but they really are the best of the best. So I think that might answer that question. In terms of Gillespie House, while it may be one of the few scheduled places in Glenfield, when that was re-evaluated, it has undergone some significant change. It was originally a cottage, and it's had quite a substantial addition to make it now look much more like a bungalow, which is outlined in detail in the re-evaluation report for that place. So it just doesn't end up meeting those unitary plan thresholds anymore. So that's why that place is proposed to be deleted.
And would that be this? And would that be the same sort of reasoning as the Masonic as well?
The Masonic is an interesting one, and obviously had a lot of ongoing debate over the years. That place has been significantly redeveloped, and in fact, what is there now is a complete replica of what. So, according to the heritage expert, there's no original fabric, or possibly, depending on who you listen to, just the front door. So it just, once again, it doesn't meet the level of value that's required under the regional policy statement. I think it's important to remember too that, you know, the rules in the unitary plan are quite rightly quite strict in terms of how to protect and manage these places. So a place really does need to get to a minimum level of value to impose those rules onto a landowner and protect those values.
And when we're the landowner, would we look at more protections such as the Chelsea cottages and the pump house? You know, that what does it mean in practice if someone wanted to change or demolish the pump house, which has, I guess, huge heritage significance, but also a lot of public connection and significance? Does it, in practice, does it change much moving from an A to a B, or does it mean that someone could paint it pink tomorrow or knock it down without much? I guess it's hard for me to follow where the outcome might be of these changes.
Yeah, to answer your question, Councillor Hills, in practice...
Oh, you just muted yourself, I think, by accident.
Apologies for that. Thank you for pointing that out. In practice, the big difference between a Category A and a Category B relates to the activity status for total and substantial demolition. Okay. So for a Category A, that is a prohibited activity, whereas for a Category B, it's discretionary. However, the objectives and policies in the Unitary Plan clearly state that the total and substantial demolition of any scheduled historic heritage place is to be avoided. So just because it's a B, it doesn't mean someone can make an application to totally demolish it and that would just be approved. Those type of changes, you know, really can only be made if there's some sort of significant public benefit or other issue that's going on. It's not like you can just come and go, I want to knock it down, I'm going to put an application and it's a B and it will get approved.
Okay, thank you. And we have discussed it, Chair, but just I am very nervous because I don't feel like it's hard to explain. So the comms on individual properties, which will no doubt and have already started to come up, will be doing a lot around that, or is that something that comes after the plan, the hearings and the consultation process?
Emma, that's about the next process once we confirm notification.
So as part of the notification, all of the reevaluation reports will be available, so people will be able to see in detail why, what the reasons are for a place to be an A or a B or to be deleted. But we will make sure that as part of the notification work, we've got things like frequently asked questions which explain the difference between a category A and a category B, and make sure that that sort of information is available so that people understand what the changes are and what they mean, so that they're able to make a submission if they wish to do so, and provide all the information that will help the decision makers make a decision on this proposed plan change.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
And my understanding is we basically can't. What are the implications if, for some reason, some of these properties got removed at this stage? We just would be against our own advice.
Emma, can you respond to that, please?
Councillor Hills, I mean, I guess you really need. My advice is that these places have all been reevaluated by a qualified heritage expert. They've done a rigorous exercise using the criteria that is in the Unitary plan and their experience and background to come up with the recommendation that they think is the right one. I think well, it would just, it would I think you have to rely on the expertise, and also to realise that the plan change is just proposed, and the whole reason for asking for submissions is to try and gain any further information that we maybe don't have. And, in all the plan changes, the heritage plan changes I've been involved with, things have changed over the course of the plan change because of submissions and evidence that have been given. So, for example, for one of the deleted places, if someone came up with some information about the heritage values of that place that we had not already known, that would be taken on board and be used to make the best decision for that place.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Emma, when you say a heritage expert has looked at all these places, I imagine it's been more than one. Are they external? Can you just give us a sense of whether it was internal, external, just the status of these individuals, companies, and just following on, I would imagine if we proceed to notification, members of the Auckland community can come forward with their expert evidence and suggest to us that we've overlooked something or we haven't taken something into account. All of that's all about the notification and testing process through a hearing, is it not?
Thank you, Chair. In answer to your second question, yes, you have it exactly right. People can make a submission and bring their experts or expertise along with them to the submission. And in terms of the evaluations, so you're also correct, they were not, 91 of them were not done by one person. They have been done by 4 of my colleagues in the Heritage Unit, so all done internally by our amazing qualified heritage staff that Council has.
Excellent. Good to hear. It was internal. And Chief of Strategy, Megan Tyler, you've got something to add to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm just hearing some of the questions around specific properties and some quite right concerns around how people will get to know about these changes, etc. So I'm just wondering, through you, could we come back to you or work with you and or maybe Councillor Hills or some others that are interested, but maybe think about how we can communicate this in advance of the notification itself, just so we can give Aucklanders as much information as possible, knowing to let them know this process is about to start, and then we should use the normal notification process to go through that, submissions, etc., etc. So I'm just really responding to some of those concerns I'm hearing.
Thanks, Megan. Yes, I think we'll debrief after this meeting and pick up some of those points so that we can communicate accurately. Okay. Oh, look, just one last one. We talked about the folly of I think your words, Emma, of the castle. There's another folly in Devonport, which is a plaque which says nothing happened here. Is there the suggestion that that particular plaque, which I say is a folly, is that folly still has ongoing value to retain? Is that correct, or is it excluded?
Thank you, Chair. That's an extremely interesting question, and we've discussed this place at length in the Heritage Unit. So that place, which is called the Nothing Happened plaque and is within the Windsor Reserve, is one of the places that's proposed to be merged together to form this new Windsor Reserve Memorial Commemorative Place, whatever we're deciding to call it. The re-evaluation, it did still have considerable social value. It doesn't have any other value under the regional policy statement criteria, but because it still has considerable social value, it's proposed that place be retained and included in the new merged place with the other commemorative items within that location.
Okay. I think we've had some good questions. Now we'll go to comments, members. So the direction that we're taking here today is to go to notification. So there's a long way to go on this. The staff have been working on this for quite some time. So we're approving notification, noting the attachments there, endorsing the Section 32 evaluation report, and we're delegating to our Manager of Heritage and the team, that's Noel Reardon, on any minor amendments that will likely crop up. So that's the direction we're taking. Speaking to this initially, Councillor John Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And just speaking to the notion of communication that's been brought up by a couple of councillors, it's very clear to me and probably to most other people looking on that the very titles being used here, Category A and Category B, and especially a change where a large number of buildings are going from Category A star to Category B, the perception will undoubtedly be that they are being downgraded in some way. There is a huge concern out in quite widespread parts of Auckland over the protection of heritage buildings, and that's not alleviated by some of the initiatives coming through from central government. So in amongst everything else, I think particularly in some of these areas like Birkenhead and Northcote, and no doubt Takapuna and Devonport too, where you have a lot of buildings that are affected by this proposal, and a number of them which certainly local communities regard as outstanding heritage features of the suburbs they live in. It'll be very important to communicate the information that Emma has given us today in terms of the Unitary Plan rules for Category B being similar to the rules for the top tier category. But I think beyond that, and also in respect of the areas that I identified, it will be useful if some reference is made back to the North Shore district plan as far as the heritage protection components go, because that's going to be the more meaningful comparison for people who have been around for a while and really making their own judgment as to whether this is largely a superficial change or it is a change of some significance. And without some reference to that material, it'll be difficult for people to make that connection, other than if they try and research stuff out themselves. As far as the demolition of buildings goes, which ultimately that's often what lies at the heart of community concern, is that they're going to lose these few remaining outstanding examples of heritage that exists within their communities. We have this prohibited status for Category A and this discretionary status for Category B, and from what I took from Emma, the overriding notion that demolition as such is to be avoided. So that essentially doesn't mark a change, of course, but I guess in terms of the communications with these particular sites, of which there are a lot, 90 odd, then again it'll be clear. It has to be very clearly signalled that that is an existing reality. It's not something that's being introduced. Otherwise, there'll be buying into some considerable backlash, I would imagine. But overall, Mr. Chair, I guess certainly in the absence of some of the specific comparators to make to the district legacy plans as it goes to these A-star buildings, which that's where that category came from, it's a little difficult to make a fully informed commentary today, or a vote for that matter, when you're not in a position really to go through in a little bit of detail. Emma's been very helpful with what she says, but certainly I guess it's in an environment we operate in terms of heritage protection across Auckland. There is concern, so there's a lot to be said for erring on the side of due diligence rather than just perhaps leaving things to chance, because we've got some not so impressive examples of that around our city where that has happened. So that's about all I've got to say, but certainly in terms of those communications, there has to be a job done, and it should be easier to focus that attention given the limited nature of the areas or local board areas that we're dealing with at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Are there others that want to make comment on the motions before us? There being none, I will put the motions. They are moved and seconded, A, B and C. I think they're clear for us all now. All those in favour say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
And to the contrary, no.
You just record my abstention, Mr. Chair, please, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. And that's on the A, B and C, Councillor Watson? Just checking.
And Councillor Walker the same.
Okay, Councillors Walker and Watson are abstaining on A, B and C, on the motions that are put, actually. And Councillor Stewart, we've recorded that. Thank you. 3 abstentions. So that, as I called it, is carried, noting the abstentions, and Councillor Sayers now also abstaining. Okay, members, I think we need to take a half-hour break and come back at 1:20, and we'll go to our final item, which is item 11. So sustain yourselves, and we will stand adjourned now and reconvene at 1:20. Thank you.